Very busy week in Missouri politics, and we are joined by the one person who made maybe the most policy headlines this week, Representative David Gregory. Welcome this week in Missouri politics.
Thanks for having me.
So in a week where the headlines talked about scandals, there's one very important public policy thing that was announced. You have undertaken in your freshman year in the House to do an audit, and you started with the Department of Revenue. What must it have been like for a freshman representative to come in and actually audit the Department of Revenue for a change?
Yeah, right. You know what? It was interesting, Scott. I started actually last March, so I was a very brand new freshman, and there was still the former administration's management. So it was they were very nice, but not quite as receptive. No one really knew what I was doing or what I was trying to do. But thankfully, Governor Greitens had appointed some new management, a new director, a new COO, who was very receptive, very open, got me everything I needed, and actually cooperated throughout the audit. So that ended up working out well.
So you do an audit of Department of Revenue. I mean, it's just such a rich thing for the folks watching at home. They're used to the Department of Revenue auditing businesses and families. You were showed up there on behalf of those businesses and families to audit them. What'd you find?
I did. Well, you know what? I ended up finding $36 million, I think, that we can save. And we can save it on both sides, both on the revenue side by collecting more revenues efficiently, and on the expense side by cutting some expenses that I think could potentially be a little wasteful.
And you found how much?
$36 million.
$36 million.
$36 million in a $76 million budget.
That they could cut and actually turn that money back to the general revenue?
Well, not all cuts. Some are expense cuts, some are revenue increases by actually increasing employees in certain key areas to make us operate more efficiently.
So when you've done this audit, you found this, what do you do with it now?
Well, actually, I just presented to the House Budget Committee. It was very well received. It's my understanding we're looking to put together a little task force.
What was Chairman Fitzpatrick's response?
It was very positive, very excited. Yeah, you know, he and I had a conversation both online, publicly, and offline. Both he was very positive in helping me carry this through, right? So the next objective is to execute. You know, great plans can be a good thing, but if it just sits on a shelf somewhere and collects dust, it's not going to do much for us.
That's my last question about this. You know, you're a successful Jefferson City politician. I'm just a simple hillbilly from West Butler County.
Right.
I hear waste, fraud, and abuse, and in my sizable hillbilly gut, when I hear Republicans do the old Republican three-step of waste, fraud, and abuse, they never have any waste, fraud, or abuse to talk about. You found $36 million in this. How do you actually implement those cuts and turn that money back over to better use of the public?
Yeah, that's going to be a tough part. You know, what we found is something that we can implement, though. None of it takes a lot of initial capital up front to implement. So that was what I really focused on, and now what we've got to do is make sure that we've got the House and the Senate budget committees behind me, both chambers behind me, and then we can start to kind of force the hand of the executive branch and the Department of Revenue. But I will say I won't be surprised if there's not complete cooperation and Governor Greitens' teams aren't already looking for ways to save money. So
in a tight budget year, no doubt, there's already some tax cuts being discussed, and how do you afford them? This is a way to actually afford them. Senator Eigel, there's been a couple weeks of battles in the Senate Ways and Means Committee. The governor's bill looks like it's languishing and maybe dead. They moved Senator Eigel's bill out of committee this week. That is a way to pay for his bill, right? If you can take these cuts, extrapolate them across state government, you could pay for the tax cut, correct?
Oh yeah, I mean, theoretically, if we were to scale a program as well as it went with the Department of Revenue, it could pay a lot more than just those tax cuts. But with regard to Senator Koenig and Senator Eigel's bill, I like what I'm seeing so far. As you know, it's new, just coming out of committee, so I'm certain there will be some changes. But we're seeing cuts to Missouri taxes as a whole. We're seeing corporate cuts. That's always good. That'll create jobs.
Well, there's no question. If there is if Senator Eigel's bill passes, people that work for my newspaper is going to get a $1,000 bonus that day. I mean, it is an actual real thing that matters.
It is real. It is real. Companies respond to tax cuts in a positive way.
So let's talk about another thing that I think is, you know, when we talk about government, we talk about, I think the key is you found a department that was transparent so you could go audit. I know one of the things you've been passionate about is the Sunshine Law, something I'm passionate about. If you're a conservative, by definition, you don't trust the government. But you can't keep an eye on the government if it makes it so hard to be a Sunshine Law. I know that's something you've been passionate about. Tell me why.
Yeah, you know what? Accountability is everything. Government accountability is absolutely everything. It's the only way we can keep them honest. Now, I do think there's a lot of good government employees, don't get me wrong. Sure. But we have to have the ability to oversee. We have to have the ability to see exactly what they're doing and when they're doing it.
It's funny. It's a misconception sometimes. People think the sunshine law is for the media. But actually, there could be the best bureaucrat you ever seen working right there in the Capitol. But that paper he produces, the records he produces, those are the property, not of the media, but of that farmer in Kenneth that pays for him, or that gun store owner in Sedalia it's their information.
That's exactly right, and that's why I'm such a big supporter of it.
It seems like the Sunshine Law was passed, and it was passed in 1973 in a response to Watergate and some of the corruption. It seems like an analog law in a digital world, and maybe the events of today make it all the more important to pick up and address now. What are the steps that could be done? Do you believe your colleagues in the legislature actually care enough about the transparency and about the public seeing that work to actually make a change and make reforms?
Oh yeah, certainly in the House of Representatives, I think we'd see a ton of support on something like that. I know General Josh Hawley is leading kind of an initiative there.
Yeah.
He's got some plans. He released a bunch of information, and kind of a twofold, both on Chapter 109, where it discusses what government officials have to keep as records, and then Chapter 610, of course, which is what they have to disclose.
Give us a look behind the curtain. I know there's some strained relationships with some parts of the executive branch, but how's Josh Hawley viewed in the legislature, in your opinion?
Oh, in my opinion, extremely strong. I mean, he's working hard. He's doing everything he can possibly be doing. We really like that kind of stuff. He's very well received. His office, his chief of staff, everybody's always open to us and available when we need them.
How does that last question, how does that relate to the U.S. Senate race? You represent South County, St. Louis, a place Donald Trump ran very strong in November. What does the race look like to you, not just in South County, but around the state?
That's an exciting race. It's going to be a close call. Both great candidates, of course. I'm supporting Josh Hawley. I believe his views are much more in line with mine and actually the state of Missouri. So I'm predicting that General Josh Hawley is going to have a great race.
Representative, thank you for joining us. Good
Thank
luck
you
with
so
auditing
much.
the rest of the
I
departments.
appreciate it.
And we hope you'll come back and report the results of the next departments.
Will
on
do,
this week in
sir.
Missouri
Thanks so
politics.
much.
We'll be right back with our opinion maker panel. Representative Tom Hannegan joins us after this.
In 2008, Republic Services acquired the Bridgeton landfill in a merger. Since then, we've invested $200 million to clean up the site and to maintain environmental compliance. We do that while staffing the facility 24/7. That's because we support permanent solutions that are safe for our neighbors and clean up the environment. We're committed to doing what's right. That's what drives us every day. We're a part of the community, and we're here for the long haul. Republic Services. We'll handle it from here.
My name is Eric Philippi. I'm a veteran, a carpenter, and a father. When Eric Greitens said he was going to change politics as usual, folks like me didn't think the first thing he'd do as governor was take dead aim at our jobs and our families' livelihoods by working to repeal prevailing wage. Call Governor Greitens. Tell him to protect prevailing wage and to protect my family, not destroy it.
At Hannegan, Missouri, we know what light can do. It draws people together and chases monsters away. And if you shine it in the right direction, it will light the path for the next generation, showing them what their tomorrow could look like, and spotlighting the possibilities that lay in front of them. Investing in our community by lighting the way forward. That's energy at work. Hannegan, Missouri.
Welcome back to This Week in Missouri Politics, joined by our opinion maker panel. David Barklage, Dean of the Republican Party, friend of the show. Welcome back, sir.
You're welcome.
Representative Tom Hannegan of St. Charles, welcome back.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Jane Dueker, lawyer, Cam Wex personality, Twitter, the hottest Twitter on Twitter. Good to have you back.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Representative Donna Baringer of St. Louis City, good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Jane Dueker, interesting week. There's many times there's people that visit from the city of St. Louis, and it's an interesting day. This week it was investigators on behalf of the St. Louis City Circuit Attorney Kim Gardner's office. It looks like the criminal investigation into the governor's conduct has taken not only past sex crimes, now it looks like it's into some questions of corruption and dark money in the fundraising list. You've been in those halls. You know what it's like on a normal day during session when it's heating up. What's your impression of it now?
Well, I've actually been around when there were other investigations, when FBI and people stormed, and people forget, and all of this kind of stuff that swirls around for a long time. Everything's okay until it's not. Yeah. So things that people that, deep down know, this ought not be going on, goes on for a while, and it usually takes once a generation for this kind of corruption to be called out and everybody to go back to remembering, what they're supposed to be doing and not doing. So, I mean, I think it's real now. I mean, I think people need to come to terms with that. And I think the scary part, I believe, is that how long it takes to get over one of these things. No matter what happens at this point, it's going to be a long time before people can get back to doing the people's business the way they should be. I mean, the legislature is going to keep fighting on. They will keep doing that, I have no doubt, but it's not the same. And so this is where it gets to the point where people need to start saying the public has to go over certain elected officials. At some point, the state and the people have to be more important, and it's beyond partisan, in my opinion.
David Barklage, I'm not sure the Republican Party didn't take till this past cycle to get over 1992. But I remember there was a scandal, not nearly as severe, with a House member from St. Louis County where a prominent Republican said, when you become a distraction, you have to go so the people's business could carry on. Obviously not the same standard here. You can't say it's not a distraction when you're having to be interviewed by law enforcement authorities.
It is. One, I want to say I appreciate you super gluing Jane to her seat because she was about to come out of it with excitement there. I think the real understory is that the legislature screwed the pooch here. The legislature, by not acting, turned the investigation over out of Republican hands to Democrat hands. And I would argue that the legislature would have fairly addressed the situation, looked at the governor, and would have acted if he were guilty or been very strong if he were innocent in these things. And I think they created a void that's being filled by an aggressive Democrat prosecutor who's going to be fair, but I mean, she can make a name prosecuting a Republican. It's a much easier task. And from that standpoint, I think the legislature's a loser and the governor has got a tough road.
Representative Hannegan, you're in that House caucus. You seem to be continuing on passing legislation. I mean, it's not like you're hiding in an office with things not happening. The House is moving forward, but clearly there's no way somebody could argue it's not a distraction at this point.
We are moving forward. We have a job to do. The people sent us there to do our job, and that's what we're going to do.
Representative Baringer, it is an interesting thing. It's previously the standard's been when you become a distraction. Well, you were in the Capitol. That's what folks are focused on. I mean, when legislative leadership is having to stop what they're doing and passing this agenda to meet with law enforcement, it's and now when it's even went out of a sex crimes investigation, now it's into a public corruption investigation. There's no way you can say it's not a distraction.
Well, it's gone beyond a distraction because the budget wasn't even presented. So our actual whole system of getting started on the budget to figure out how we're going to run our state was slowed down by this. So it's more than a distraction. It's slowing down our process to do our jobs.
Do you think if the Republicans in the legislature are going to accept the fact the governor's telling the truth, the woman on this tape's lying, going to back him, the family values argument, though, that seems to be gone, right? Maybe that's not bad for Republicans, David, just to say we're not for family values anymore.
But that's no longer the issue. That's sort
when the
of
whole
over.
Party sends quietly outside of a few courageous House members, that is the statement you're making.
I think I would not read that much into their silence. I think there's a confusion of what to do with the new governor who's doing things that they want to do in some respects. Others who don't like the guy but don't want to make this about personally about him. But, this guy's facing the St. Louis prosecutor's office, Morley Swingle, former longtime prosecutor in St. Louis and Cape Girardeau County, our prosecutor, tough guy. She's got a whole lot of people on this. And I just think, again, that we've sort of turned it over to someone who has no reason not to fully prosecute this case, and Republicans have missed an opportunity, and their silence says a lot.
I don't think it's fair to say the Republicans would have swept this under the rug. You have Representative, you have maybe the most honorable person to ever hold the office of Speaker, holding it now, who's dealt with a lot of these issues. I think there is a case to be made that Todd Richardson, he's been called a corrupt politician. He's been called a career politician. He's been called a third grader by this governor. He's been attacked more by this governor than Jay Nixon ever attacked him. Yet it doesn't seem like Speaker Richardson has held the personal attacks against him and how he's went about this situation.
I can't say enough good things about our Speaker, Todd Richardson. He's a fair man. He's a good man. I think even the Democrats would say that he's very fair, giving them floor time and listening to them. We have a great Speaker. He's going to, Elijah has big shoes to fill when he takes over, but I think Todd handles himself respectfully, gracefully, and he's doing his job.
Jay Dueker, but there is the silence gets harder every time there's another set of headlines and this case moves forward, it does get a little bit harder to justify just saying we see nothing, we hear
Or
nothing.
just asking. I mean, I was imploring on Twitter Speaker Richardson, who I have a great amount of respect. I'm one of the Democrats that respect him tremendously and have for a long time. But this is worth a conversation. I mean, you started impeachment proceedings against Governor Nixon for, I don't know, was it the database or whatever goofy thing it was, and you won't even open an investigation. I mean, look, this woman's on tape. I mean, I think we get desensitized to what happened here. This woman was on tape saying that she was bound, blindfolded, half naked, and threatened with a picture. I mean, that's not normal behavior. If this guy were innocent and this guy, he would be demanding an investigation saying, clear me now. His silence is deafening. I mean, he only speaks through his lawyers. Even Donald Trump speaks for himself.
Well,
I mean,
do you think women have done enough to step up here and press that point?
I was actually very shocked and surprised to see the Republican women who did step up and ask him to step down. And I think that...
Do you think Democrat women have said enough in this situation, though?
I think we have. I mean, I think we have. I think I'm not a lawyer, and I don't pretend to be. And so I like to wait until I have all the facts, sit back, and then once we decide how we're going to move forward, then I have a voice.
But that's contrary to the fact of but the burden you're placing on Republicans. Republicans should make a statement and be out there, while Democrats should wait until the outcome. I mean, it sounds fair, but politically, I think there's a lot of college views that are letting the Republicans try to implode each other and being quiet. And so I think the Democrats are partial to blame to the extent that they are approaching this from a very political standpoint rather than a policy.
At some point, it's just wrong.
Every Democrat in the legislature is far better if this governor stays in office, as weak as he is. And to that point, Representative Hannegan, you saw an 18-hour process. The governors came out for two pieces of legislation since the scandal broke. There's something with a dog bill, and he came up with his own version of a tax cut. Within 18 hours, the House votes defeats on the floor his dog bill, and then the next morning, the Senate Ways and Means Committee moves out Senator Eigel's tax cut plan and leaves his in committee. Democrats probably are better with this governor as opposed to somebody else that doesn't have to have investigators probing the Capitol.
Well, I don't know if there's really that correlation that this is causing these things to happen. You know, as you debate on the floor, people raise good points, and you can sometimes sway that opinion. For the dogs, the Champ bill that the governor wanted with the police dog protection, I think that was a case where it was brought to us that maybe the penalties of the crime didn't fit necessarily, and so it swayed a lot of people's votes. As far as the governor's budget, I think that everybody's willing to work with his budget. Bill Eigel, who happens to be the senator from my district, is a leader on this issue. He has been for years. He's very
the senator from tax cut.
Yes, and he's very passionate about it, and he's doing a great job about it. But I think he's willing to also listen to the governor, maybe incorporate things into it. But he is taking the lead, and he's doing a good job.
And Dueker, Ron Richard, though, said, yeah, we're not doing that. Scott Fitzpatrick pretty much took the main part and said, yeah, we're not doing that. They have far more stick over what happens here than the governors at this point.
The governor didn't write his first budget. I don't know why anyone thought he would write a second budget. So, I mean, he really, I don't know. He's just really not about governing. I mean, can we just say the emperor has no clothes? This guy never wanted to govern. This has always been a stepping stone. And so just the legislature is ignoring him, and that's probably what they're going to have to do to get the people's work done.
I mean, you can't say these things aren't a factor in a governor's tax plan. Can't even get out of committee.
Correct. And also remember, neither of these tax bills have House companion bills. So that's always key as well. How strong is the legislation based on if there's companion bills?
History says the House will probably just pass it and the Senate won't.
Right. But if this governor is still in office come the end of session, he's going to veto.
It would be very House
to
reconsider the dog bill, right, and vote it out at some point, correct? I mean,
well, we'll see.
David Barklage, I mean, these things are real. I mean, these are real pieces of legislation that aren't moving now. And to say that, I mean, it's sort of, you can be Baghdad Bob for a while, but at some point the tanks are in the camera shot.
That's right. And it's kind of year that stuff has to get done or people are going to be called out in election.
Let's talk about something that is getting done. That's the utility bill. Everybody kind of did the kumbaya and thought there was compromising peace in the valley. Well, at least Senator Romine said that. Now, Senator Schaaf, frankly, said it wasn't. But it come back, and now there was issues getting the bill third read. However, it did move out of the Senate. Where's it at right now?
You know, I've worked in the past with Ameren. I've represented several of the senators that are very emotionally on the opposite side of the issue. And I think when you enter in such a small body, emotion on these kinds of things, it makes it very, very tough to get to kind of any resolution. And so I just think I think it eventually something will happen, but you know, it's tough. It's very emotional and it's very distracting early on in the Senate's process, and it's going to probably hurt other things.
Jay Dueker, I mean, there's been emotions on both sides. It seems like this year the emotion on addressing the grid maybe even equaled the emotion on not. We talked last week on this show about how everybody kind of, Senator Romine, very well respected, came to this agreement. Then the agreement somehow didn't hold. What do you think happens?
Well, it's hard because, I mean, I will tell you, even when I was in the governor's office 14, 15 years ago, I'm embarrassed to admit it was that long, but these fights have been going on that long. I mean,
We're keeping track.
Yeah, pretty much. But I think that this stuff is so difficult, and Missouri is so far behind on all of its infrastructure, its utility infrastructure included, and it's expensive.
We can only live off KIP bond for so long.
I mean, well, and
As a
we're
state.
still paying those bonds, but I mean, I think that we have to have a serious discussion about utility, roads. Our infrastructure is holding our state back. And we're finding that these fights, these emotional battles, can hold that back. But we have to have a long-term plan. And again, that's where an executive branch could be helpful in helping to start formulate what our long-term plans are as far as utilities are concerned. And we're not doing that. So we're going to keep seeing these fights until we come up with a plan.
Representative Hannegan, I mean, you saw we lived off a lot of the stuff Governor Bond did as far as infrastructure. Then Senator Bond, being so influential, I think was able to patch over some of the state's lack of investment with federal funds here and there. But he's gone now. Does the current legislature have the ability to do these big things for the state?
Yeah, and I think that's what we're working on. You know, it's hard. You're dealing with people's money. People don't like necessarily taxes. You want to protect the consumers with all these issues, but you have to do things. And we're at a point where we, like you were saying, we just need to address this and have these conversations and move forward. So we just got to be really careful about how we do it. We all know we have to do it, but how do we get there? And I think that, you know, we might have to really look at doing like a fuel tax. I mean,
Sure.
Nobody likes to talk about that, but
It's
that
the
might be an
adult
option.
thing. I mean, if you're not talking about that, you're not serious, right? I mean, you're not.
We've
It's
been
either
talking
do that
about
or
it
don't.
for 20 years. How many times have we tried to get the gas tax up just to even do some road infrastructure? I'm glad that Republicans are finally coming to the table saying you can't consistently tell the people that everything is fraud, waste, and abuse. At some point, you have to invest in our future, and that costs money. And we can't keep telling the public that you can get by on this with just, fraud, waste, and abuse.
And it was a Republican governor that last proposed the last gas tax, John Ashcroft, in '92.
Representative, let's talk about a place that one of your colleagues came into the legislature with you. David Gregory was just on the show. Waste, fraud, and abuse. I know I roll my eyes too. He's actually trying to find waste, fraud, and abuse. It's like a Republican. He's like a unicorn. You should keep him and feed him so he can be studied.
Yeah. I think that's great. I do. Yeah. And I saw his audit, and I saw that we are once again going to look at the Missouri withholdings tax, that we give actual discounts to businesses in the state if they pay it early.
That's ridiculous.
And we've always looked at that and said, oh, it's $34 million, we could get back into the state. But here's the thing, if I have a small business, that's going to probably cost me maybe $1,000 a year, losing that. But if I'm a large corporation in St. Louis and you're going to take away that incentive from me, I think there's going to be some pushback. So I wish him luck, because I agree, we shouldn't be doing it at all. So hopefully we'll be able to fix that.
David Barklage, if you had a nickel for all the Republicans that said waste, fraud, and abuse, you'd be a gazillionaire. He actually may have found some waste, fraud, and abuse.
See, he's playing with me because he knows my big pet peeve is the fact that Democrats ignore waste, ignore waste, and Republicans cut instead of managing. And it's always been a pet peeve that Republicans are easily to cut constituent services that don't vote for them, and Democrats are always willing to tax taxpayers that don't get them reelected. And so I think David Gregory is showing leadership in moving Republicans to cutting instead of, or to managing instead of cutting. And I think that it could potentially lead to Republicans the promised land of actually creating an efficient, impactful, and effective government. I think this is the start of what I hope is a movement by Gregory to show leadership to the next generation.
You're a legislator who's a Republican that actually doesn't get a tax refund. You own a business. You know what that's actually like. So many Republicans talk about these things. They have no concept of them. You've seen Representative Gregory's proposal. Is some of this real stuff that can be done?
I think I'm so proud of Representative David Gregory for doing what he's doing. I mean, we need to be more transparent. I think this is good conversations to have. We need to be as transparent as we can. I think it's commendable that he's doing this.
Yeah. Jane, let's talk about the U.S. Senate race real quick here. These events are opportunities for Josh Hawley. Is he taking advantage of them?
No. I mean, I think he needs to. Frankly,
You let me guess. I might have thought.
I know. Well, you saw I'm out on the right side of the table, but to the viewer on the left. Well, no, the problem is he's coming real close to getting into the guy's mud. I mean, I think something really important that the Attorney General needs to do is to not, help this guy out. I mean, this guy's going to drag him down. The governor is if he doesn't watch it. I mean, the Confide lawsuit, that's kind of a mess. The investigation, that kind of stuff. He needs to be very careful not to get splashed with that with the Greitens mud.
I mean, he is in a tough spot, but you're right. He may have made it thus far, but Representative Schaaf introduced a resolution that it's getting tougher every day.
I just think this was a great gift to Claire McCaskill.
Yeah. Then we're going to sit back and watch. I mean, that's the real thing is Democrats can stand back and just watch Republicans stew in their own mud.
If we get a Republican actually running in this race, and I don't know if Josh gets in or not because he's saying he's running, but he's acting a lot like Matt Blunt did in February 2008, and ended up Matt Blunt got out. I hope Hawley runs. I think Claire will get beat by any reasonable Republican campaign.
Josh Hawley's running, right?
Yes, he is, and I think he's going to win.
With a minute left, who won the week?
Chloe Kim, the half-pipe gold medalist, and when she wrapped herself in that United States flag, she represented everything our country stands for.
Jane Dueker, who won the week?
The investigators, Mr. Foley and Mr. Tisby. They came in and this is the deal. They're going to tell they're in town,
I think they were shocked how many people were wanting to talk to them, like looking for them.
Absolutely, and then everybody talked about talking to them. So I mean, that ought to tell you sort of where this is. And I mean, shockwaves are happening. I mean, it's time to pay attention.
Representative Hannegan, who won the week?
Our future speaker, Elijah Har, for representing us so well in D.C. They're having that conversation about infrastructure that we were talking about earlier.
Adults in the room finally on infrastructure, maybe.
Yep.
Who won the week?
Well, one, I want to say this is the nicest person I've ever been on this show with. I've never
That's
seen
not a
anybody
high
so
bar,
nice.
though. That's not.
I know, but I'm just
it's not
saying.
a hard race to
I'm going to
win.
say this is one call to Jane. Ernie Trachis, the St. Louis County Council member who's been under fire by the county exec, has turned the tables and is investigating a pay-to-play deal of trading a $70 million lease for about $350,000 in campaign contributions to go back to pay personal loans to the county exec.
I'm going to say David Gregory, who if he was in county government would have an audit and find that actually a Republican that when he says waste, fraud, and abuse, you don't roll your eyes. And we hope you do not roll your eyes when you watch us next week on This Week in Missouri Politics. This Week in Missouri Politics, brought to you by Spire and Sterling Bank.
Melanie's a good kid. I call her a kid. She's not a kid, but she's a kid to me. She is kind and complicated.
She's kind of a little quirky, but she has the greatest personality. She's always up to do things, wants to do fun stuff. So Melanie has Down syndrome. She has some definitely health issues. She has a speech impediment that makes it difficult for her to communicate. So a lot of things she has to maybe show you, or she has a hard time getting words out.
Yeah, where was this one taken? Is that your aunt's house?
She gets up and then she gets herself dressed. Puts her dirty clothes in the hamper. She's very self-sufficient that way. She comes into the kitchen and staff provide her medication for her and she takes it. And then staff prepares breakfast for her. We have her wipe off the table. She might need a prompt to do that, but she does that on her own. 3 days a week she goes to program for Easter seals, and she does a lot of activities throughout the day with that.
She is thriving with independence, being in this house, in this program. She's very happy to be here. This is her home. It's an amazing journey that has happened to her.
She says she'll visit her family, but she wants to come home. So she feels like this is her home. And there's nothing you can make better than for her to be like, this is my home. We're working on different things all the time. So it's a continuous work in progress. We're looking at having her learn her address and phone number. That's been difficult for her, just to memorize it. But we do repetition every day.
You want to go look for some DVDs?
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know where she'd be if there wasn't for Easter seals. She would be probably having a less fulfilling life.
I'm very grateful to Easter Seals for the opportunity that she's been given. I've seen huge changes in her since she's been here to be on her own. And this is the best way that she can be on her own.
Where's your home? Here? Yeah. This is your home.
And I love this job. There's not a day that I don't want to not come here. And I know I'm making a difference. You can see that Melanie's happy. And that's probably our biggest goal, is we want our individuals to have rights and freedoms. And you can tell that she's very happy with that. She gets to live her life on her terms. And she's happy doing it.
Who's in this picture with you?
Daddy.
She lost her dad about 4 years ago, and they were very tight. They were very close, and I'm sure he's smiling down right now.
We help people with disabilities be as independent as possible. We help them live out their life as full members of our community. People with disabilities want to do the same things you and I do. They want to work, they want to be valued, they want to have friends, and we help them achieve those goals.
We have to set priorities as a society, as a state, of what's important to us. And I think supporting individuals with disabilities is a really important thing for us to do. It's honoring the dignity of every human being and what their capabilities are and what their potential is, and allowing them to pursue whatever that is.
Many people with developmental disabilities need lifetime care. So we have a choice as a community. We can put them in institutions and nursing homes, which is expensive and inhumane, or we can help them live in the community and be as independent as possible. We can teach them the skills that maximizes their ability, whatever that is. That's good not only for the individual with a disability and their family, but it's good for the entire community.
That happiness that comes, that fulfillment, that dignity that people are allowed to have when we embrace the opportunities that are out there for people with disabilities is something that ripples across society. And so it obviously has an impact for that individual, but for their neighbor to see that individual working and having those interactions, and then that spreading across our state is an important thing. I think that just, it should color how we view the world and what our priorities are.
The hope and opportunity that Easter Seals offers to people with disabilities would not be possible without the support of our community. Our donors, volunteers, neighborhoods that welcome people with disabilities, and our champions in Jefferson City make all of this possible.